Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
I'm Scott Warr. What happens when the race isn't about winning, but simply about beating the clock? In this episode, we're going to talk with Dylan Harris about his latest film. He's an ultra runner and a filmmaker, and his latest film is called The Cutoff, which follows back of the pack runners facing aid station cutoff times to avoid the disqualification. It's an honest look at the pressure, the doubt, and quiet determination that defines so many ultra runners and their experiences out there. If you've ever wondered whether you're moving fast enough, this is the one that's going to hit close to home. Dylan, thanks for joining us. Tell us, first of all, where are you located and how did this film all come about?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the film. So thank you. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So I've got that local connection to Air Viper running and all things that happen here. And then as far as the idea for this film, I've been fortunate enough that my introduction to trail running through Jamil Curry happened just before he brought the Cocodona 250 to life. And so one of my first major stories within ultra running was the inaugural year of Cocodona. And, the race really seeped into my soul, my heart. I felt as I kind of gained more experience and went to different races around the country that I found that there are certain races that have these intangible characteristics that just present an opportunity for the runners and for the volunteers to have a really dramatic experience. And I felt that Cocodona had that magic. And each year, Jamil Curry, he's a huge advocate for telling stories in this space. And each year, it was bringing new, exciting runners each year. And so we kept pursuing that person would be exciting to work with, or let's film that group. But after the first year, I had the idea, once I learned about the cutoffs of a race and the back of the pack. And also, for me, it was all new, like learning about the back of the pack is it's not something to look down on for a lot of those people who race there. They're proud of it and there's a culture behind it. And that's what I discovered. So from just that, after that first year, I had the idea of this film. And this doesn't always happen, but within minutes of having the idea, I had the title name literally from the very beginning, The Cutoff. It just felt so dramatic. And it was a timing thing, basically, to kind of wrap it up. It was a timing thing, and this film was for sure a passion project of mine and something I felt that was unique and deserved to be told, a story deserved to be told. But it had to happen at the right time, and I think it did, ultimately. So,
boy, I love the concept. I've had the chance of watching runners up front racing for podium, the mid-pack runners, and then the group at the end coming up trying to catch the cutoff. And I don't think there's any runners that run harder with more heart and determination than those watching when's the cutoff. How much time do we have to get into this aid station and then out of this aid station? It is a real push. The best part of the story, I think, is at the tail of the race and watching these athletes try to get it done.
And that's why we find more people at the golden hour of most races that are standing up and cheering. The most spectators out there is in that last hour, not necessarily for the mid pack or even the podium runners.
Yeah, Dylan, I think. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Or maybe Dylan has a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Dylan. You do your comment. We aren't usually this disorganized. Sorry.
No problem. No problem at all. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna ask you, Dylan, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Were you a filmmaker before you were a trail runner, or were you a trail runner that became a filmmaker?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, my introduction to trails was through hiking. I was really into through hiking in my early years. I always talk about like the pendulum. At that point in my life, the pendulum was very much to being a hippie dirtbag living in my truck and going on these like solo adventures to discover myself, you know?
Mhm.
And ultimately I ended up figuring I wanted to go to school, and and I decided to do journalism, because it was kind of the one thing that I felt when I had a homework assignment to write a paper or a story to tell. It was the one thing that I genuinely cared about, just myself. It wasn't about the teacher. I wanted to tell a good story. So I pursued journalism and found a camera. And then it ultimately became the camera just was an excuse to like find beautiful places and go on epic adventures. And I found that through hiking. And then it just so happened that when I wasn't through hiking, I figured like, gosh, how could I keep this fitness? So every time I did a through hike, I didn't have to relearn it and just kill myself out there. Um, and that's when I discovered local trail races. I started doing a few marathons. Um, and I was just doing photography. So I was like pursued photojournalism, and I was doing everything and anything. I was doing social media for restaurants. I was doing, weddings and family portraits, anything. I just decided that I'm going to make this happen. Right. And so, whatever that looks like, I'm here for the journey. This is the long haul. I don't need anything right now. I want to do this for the rest of my life. Um, and so, I was doing anything and everything, leaning into the photography. And it wasn't until I decided to move back from Colorado to Arizona where I decided I wanted to get more involved in I went to Colorado to pursue the mountains and pursue the outdoor culture. And when I came back to Arizona, I realized like, man, I could find that right here where I grew up. Um, and that is when, uh, things just started clicking. Ultimately, what I cared about was starting to be what I was shooting, and and yeah, and that's when I got connected with Jamil Curry, basically.
So
So
you went to school for journalism and you love the stories, and through your films you're trying to tell stories. I'm interested, what kind of stories did you think you were going to tell by shooting this documentary? Is it a documentary? Yes, it is a documentary. Um, what did you expect the stories to be, and did they meet your expectations, or did they exceed or differ from your expectations?
yeah, that's a good question. I, I grew up playing competitive sports, and almost everybody I played sports with either went to really great colleges or ended up playing professionally. And I didn't know the effect that had on my mentality growing up, but once I sort of separated from it and left sport, I realized like what was left behind.
Hmm.
There's a bit of a competitiveness. There's a need to be inspired and to fit in, sort of, and access people that I feel were at a high level. Um, and ultimately, that's just kind of what the camera presented to me. I think that's what I gravitated towards it. And when I discovered um, trail running to me was the perfect blend. I talked about the pendulum earlier of me when I was 19, 20, 21. I was living in my truck and going on these big, long through hikes. That part of me was met by competition, which I discovered in trail running. It was this blend of elite performances combined with culture and passion and lifestyle, basically. And so when I found trail running, to me, I just felt that there was a story in every corner. And what really kind of grabbed a hold of me and said, like, I'm going to lean into this for a while is looking at films from the past. Like you talk about Billy Yang, J.B. Benna, Dean Leslie, stuff that Solomon TV was doing back in the day. All of these things, to me, as I looked back, kind of built the foundation of ultra running. Like we can all relate, people who are into running, you can all relate being on a treadmill or sitting on the couch late at night with a glass of wine and you're watching one of your favorite trail running films and you're 3/4 of the way through it and you're just filled with inspiration and you don't even finish the film. You turn it off, you go on Ultra Sign Up and you sign up for that next race because you're just so inspired, right? And to me, that's what it just felt like, this place where I could, tell stories in so many different directions and really like reach people, whereas like if you're out in the real world, there's so many directions you can go, but here it just felt like a community that was ready to hear what I potentially had to say, in the sport. So
now Dylan, just for clarification, 3/4 of the way through the movie or 3/4 of the way through the bottle of wine? Which is it that inspires you to turn off the TV and get out on the trail?
That's a great question. I think we could start something new with that. It's like, hey, you got to keep up.
Hey, as you stated earlier, you started through hiking and then evolved into trail running. And I'm as we're talking, there might be an advantage to that. A lot of people start out, say, with a 5K and move to the trail running and the longer events. I imagine you carried some good lessons from through hiking that he moved into your trail running.
Yeah, man, I never thought about that actually, but it's a really great point. I mean, my first trail running race was a marathon, and I decided to do it only 1 week after returning from my first through hike of the Pacific Crest Trail, because I was thinking, like, gosh, my legs feel stronger than they've ever felt in my entire life. I haven't ran in 4 or 5 months or whatever, but I wonder if it translates. And it's still the fastest time I've ever ran in a marathon,
Wow.
I remember being 20 miles in and feeling the best I'd felt all day. And I went faster from 20 miles to the end of the marathon. But other than that, I don't think it's as much about the running that through hike prepared me for. To me, it opened my mind up to what the world can offer when you put yourself out there, when you make yourself vulnerable. In through hiking, I thought I was going out on these missions to like prove myself to the world and prove myself that I was worthy. But ultimately what I found is just that what I really needed was to understand that the world was a very welcoming place. And like, if you have a goal, there's people there to support you, and that's what through hiking taught me basically. And trail running, I found the exact same thing. No matter what your goal is, everybody wants you to just get to that finish line, right?
Well, I really like that, your comment that you made right there. I know that
Eureka!
I gotta push it. I gotta push the Eureka button. That is two golden nuggets that we have to recognize and go back and restate. First, an anecdotal experience that hard, long distances on your feet, not fast, will actually make you a better runner. And the number two thing is the community aspect, that if you have this personal goal, the community is there to support that goal. So those, I had to press Eureka, Don. Sorry I interrupted you. Did it mess you up on your question?
No, I can always bring my question back.
Okay.
But, we very rarely, Dylan, ask for audience participation, but I've got to ask for some comments. Do we want to keep this Eureka thing? Scott is he's into this button. I think it's distracting and annoying. And then he repeats the golden nugget as if we didn't hear it. So I think some audience participation, write in, do something, send up some smoke signals. I don't care what you do. So here's where I think that the benefit of through hiking, you became an amazing problem solver. You listened to your body. You could see that something was starting to happen. You had to get some create an action to get rid of it. And that same exact problem solving technique is used with trail running. I think that's one of the biggest benefits. And you probably didn't go out too fast for your first time, because big risk. You didn't have to put the 5K pace on. You said slow, steady wins the race, and I'm not going to bury myself here physiologically and tear myself up so I won't finish. So you probably started out with a good, some good guardrails.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the through hiking allowed me to deal with my issues on the trail, right? Like, I wasn't able to call my mommy and have her come pick me up, right? Like, the reality is I would have aches and pains that if you haven't experienced before, you would think, maybe I'm injured. Like, maybe I need to get, but it's those things that you're kind of forced to deal with, to learn your body more, understand what you're capable of mentally. That stuff was huge in through hiking, because it's the day in and day out grind, right? So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Dylan, this isn't your first film. You've done other films where you highlighted maybe some of the front of the pack runners. What did you find different about these personalities in the Cutoff? Were they similar characteristics, or were they different characteristics? Can you expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll start by saying that, like, I think something that I've discovered about myself is that regardless of the intention with their race or their performance or whatever, if they're elite, celebrity, or just a normal person, to me, it's always about discovering like bringing the human element to it. Who are you outside of this sport? What has led you here? What makes you human? What makes you relatable? Because running 250 miles isn't always so relatable. But, it's, to me, Jeff Garmeyer said something to me a long time ago, and that I remember, he's ran this race every single year since its inception. He has a lot of long trail records. He's an awesome guy. But he said that just simply whatever gets you out there. And that's always stuck with me. And so I never judge somebody for their intentions with why they're out there. The fact that they're out there doing something positive for themselves is incredible, right? And to answer your question, the difference between the elites versus what I found at the very back, the elites have the experience and the history. And I think what I found with the elites is that they're people who are committed to doing something better each time they do it, right? The way that they enjoy the experience is by trying to push the limits each time in their own body. And the difference I see at the very back of the pack, it's not too dissimilar, but what they're seeking, to me, is an experience. And I think they have the same desires to push that experience, because we all know throughout life, as you get more comfortable, you're seeking something that spikes those endorphins, right? That is the next level for yourself, so you can grow as a person. But what they're out there for is more, they're not crunching numbers. I mean, when they get close to the cutoff, right, that's where it kind of differs, right? And that tensity comes back and the numbers come back into play. But to me, they're out there for the experience. They're out there for the community and to be a part of something that, like, they're really inspired by. And so it's different in that sense.
Well, your comment about elite runner, I kind of turned that around in my head and thought, well, you're right. Everybody out there that had the motivation or the why to get out there and lace them up that day, or put a bib on, really qualifies as elite. They're different. Most of the people aren't doing it. And if you're racing against yourself or what you potentially can do that day, regardless of your fitness level, whether you're peaking at your fitness level or you're just kind of getting it done and you're not sure in your mind if you've trained enough to pull this off, you still have to get that vehicle, that body, in the most efficient way down that trail to the finish line. And every decision you make, from pace to fuel to everything, contributes to that success. And that makes you elite if you're willing to do that.
This is a really good point. So this is something that Michael Versteeg has talked a lot about. Michael Versteeg believes that experience is the most interesting thing. And so, but the reality is, if you were to compare what the people in the back of the pack are doing to the people in the front of the pack, in theory, everybody is moving at their perceived hardest pace, right? There's a comfortable pace for every single person, because being out there for a long time isn't necessarily the goal for most. The goal is to move within yourself and push yourself at times to get to the finish line and accomplish this thing and have an experience. But if everybody's moving at their perceived threshold, then ultimately what the people are doing at the back of the pack is wildly impressive in its own right, because they're on their feet for twice as long often. 2 more nights out there, and they're still moving forward. And it's not like they're not feeling in those first 100 miles. It's not like they're not feeling the intensity of the situation and the need to push and keep moving forward. They're feeling that just like the elites are. But the elites, they have a dedication to this craft that's allowed them to, to train and prepare over time to like build up their fitness. But they're take nothing away from like the mentality, right? Like it's an elite mentality that exists through anyone who honestly steps up to the start line, because it's so scary, right? But anyone who crosses that finish line, they had to showcase an elite mentality to get there, for sure.
Yeah, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, but I haven't said it to you yet, Dylan. So that makes it safe. If every runner got into a big circle, they're all in their bib, and it's the end of the race, and you looked over across and found the elite runner, and they looked and found the cutoff group, the back of the pack, they both had equal admiration. It's like, how is that person so fast? And the elite runner that's up front standing on a podium said, how is that person so tough? I couldn't go another 10 minutes the way I was pushing. How did they survive twice as long? So there's admiration to both sides, and that's what builds our community and our culture. Fix that, Ryan. Culture.
Yeah, if you want a really quick example of this, look farther than in 2024 when I was filming The Chase, right? At the very end of the race, hopefully everyone's seen it by now, so I'm not spoiling anything, but Harry Subertus, who we didn't follow, we had a very deep field, and we recognized his talent and his performances prior, but it's not in the 5 that we chose to follow. He ultimately came to win the race. And with every athlete that was in the film, I wanted to follow up immediately to get a post-race interview while they looked, the way that they looked and their mind was right. And so I reach out to Harry and his girlfriend. I'm like, you guys got to be a part of this film. That was spectacular, and just so much respect. Like, is there any way I can come find you guys for a post-race interview? And Harry's girlfriend's like, yeah, he's going to be here for he sends me the location. He's going to be here for 6 hours. But if you come by around this time, I think he'll be able to have a break. And Harry was at one of the aid stations before on course, volunteering for a 6-hour shift the day after he won the race and set the course record, because he wanted to support all the runners there. And then even just last year at the Cutoff, he was there at golden hour for the very final finishers as well. And so that just shows, right? That's what the community is built on. Like that's the foundation of trail running to me, you know?
We joke about it sometimes, and forgive me for waxing philosophic here. Sometimes we say that this is trail running helps us become better human beings. But I think what you just stated is very important for not just our community in trail running, but for us in our communities. And that is, regardless of where you see people, whether it's economic or political or whatever, we need to recognize that we're all racing our own race or living our own lives, and we're doing the best that we can. And so if you're shaming someone or being derogatory or judging someone, you need to realize, man, wherever they are, if they're the front of the pack, they're at the back of the pack, they're doing their hardest and they're playing the game. And I think that that's something that I think I got out of what you said that's going to help me become a better human being. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree. Like there's so many parallels to normal life, 100%.
Hey, let's talk about this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to meet Dylan and realize that he's one of us, no doubt. But Dylan made a movie. Why did you pick this topic, this subject? How did it?
I have a question.
What?
So when you did the chase, you said, okay, here it's a deep field, but here are the five guys we're going to follow because we know that they're really fast and they have a really good chance of winning the race. How do you pick out the ones that are going to be at the very back of the pack that are going to be chasing the cutoff? And were they, as you approached them, were they, how did they feel about that? Hey, can we follow you with a camera? Because we think you're going to be chasing the cutoff during this race.
Yeah, if you come up to me, I'm going to be a little bit concerned
if you came to me,
because I'm not going to win the race. So I know you picked me to just barely make it.
Yeah, those conversations absolutely did happen. I mean, just a little bit of backstory. Like, there was a few years where I was kind of on the rotation of trail running events, working with all my dream clients, the big players, going to all the biggest races around the world. And I just discovered that it didn't feel authentic to me in like my experience with trail running. The fact that I made the chase last year, and then the cutoff this year is truly like it's my commitment to be authentic, to not prioritize, a specific demographic. The last thing I want to do is be in the sport to sell a product. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to sell the culture. I'm trying to sell the stories that exist within ultra running. And that is my commitment. And so the cutoff to me, so I wanted to do the cutoff last year, but the chase, that men's field presented itself. And that was a discussion that I had to have with Jamil Curry. But a little funny backstory is I actually was 2 months into planning to film the cutoff, not at last year's race, but at the year I filmed in 2024, the chase. I was meant to film the cutoff.
Really?
And I had, and I had convinced people, gosh, I feel like I can say this now because we can all laugh about it, but maybe you guys know Ryan Van Duzer by chance? He's like a big YouTuber. He does a lot of ultra marathons and bike touring, but he's like a really cool guy, a host of like some outdoor TV episodes back in the day. And he was going to be like kind of the host of this concept that I had. And I had convinced him to run the race in 2024 and sort of told him about this story. And yeah, ultimately it kind of fell apart, but the hope was that after the chase, maybe there'd be some more buy-in and support for the cutoff the following year. And that's ultimately what happened. And then, to answer the last part of your guys' question, that was probably the first concern. As like I brought the creative team together, that was some of the first things we were laughing about, is like, how are we going to sort of tell people what we're doing? Because we wanted to show up at the expo the day before and pick people out of the crowd and interview them, which we ultimately did, to get like a real, a big view of who these people are, and to kind of talk about the cutoff. And yeah, the challenge is, okay, well, we're going to identify ourselves as the people who are making this film. And so when they see us out on course, are they going to be like, feel like they're doomed every time they see us? Like, oh, the cutoff must be close. Like the cutoff is coming. If Dylan's there with a camera, I must be screwed, But ultimately what we decided to do is a little bit of a white lie. We told people we were making a film about the back of the pack, and kind of the personalities that exist there, and the experience that the back of the pack has in the race, which isn't a lie in itself. That's exactly what we did. But the cutoff, it just feels a little dramatic to tell people while they're running that's
Right.
what we're doing. So yeah.
No, I think we understand 100% what the theme of Cutoff, the four of us here on this podcast right now can recognize that they're some of the toughest runners out there, and almost an honor to say, hey, we think you're going to finish this thing and it's going to be tough and your story is going to be amazing. We want to capture it. I'd feel honored if that was the case. I don't think we are trying to make fun of anybody or put you out there as on the dunce hat, wearing ankle weights and big combat boots. You're not that. You're just tough. And we want the world to know just how tough you are. I think that's how our community looks at Cutoff. When we go to that movie, we're not looking to make fun of anybody. We're about to witness some amazing humans doing some incredible things. Yeah. And that's what would make me want to go sit in a theater and see this thing.
Yeah. So yeah. And thank you for sort of like clarifying that, because that's, I hope people recognize that when they see the film. The entire, like, if you were to look at like what's the surface level reasoning for this film, it's can we take the same passion, the same budget, the same can we put in the same effort, the same budget, all that stuff that we put into the elites, and can we put that into the back of the pack? And ultimately, what has come from it, to me, feels like a really unique film. Something that's fun is obviously, like, you're going to have the emotions, like you're going to have the stories, the tears, the wild ride, the laughter, all that kind of stuff. But what we ultimately did as well is we recognized the Cutoff as like a main character of this film, and sort of like we wanted to not limit who we showed in the race. We really wanted those last 2 hours before the Cutoff to expose whoever was interacting with that very, very back of the pack. And we didn't want to limit it to just particular stories, right? And so the Cutoff itself became almost the main character. And there's a tension, and there's a unique experience that exists we're working with Tyler Myers, is this incredible sound engineer. And he works with a guy named Lance, who's a musician. And we've really cultivated an experience sound-wise. And then we're working with an incredible graphics guy who does 3D graphics, and then another team that has 2D graphics. So you're constantly going to feel the clock. You're going to feel the magnitude of the course itself. I mean, 250 miles point to point is huge. And I personally believe that this film is going to do the best job of any film yet at really allowing you to understand the scale of this race. And when you've got somebody who's 30 minutes in front of the Cutoff leaving an aid station, you're going to understand that they have 32 miles to the next major aid station or something, which is insane. And it's you're talking about like 12, 14 hours for these individuals before they're going to see their crew again and get to really resupply or potentially rest like they'd like to. And so we want people to feel these things. And like, I really do believe that like we built this film to see in a theater 100%. And that's also a dedication that I've been sort of leaning into as well. Is you know, for me, I share some of those similar attributes as maybe like I was explaining that an elite runner might have, where when I make something, like when I do a film, each time I want to try and grow and get better and do it better than I've done before. And to me, my new direction is the commitment to making things to be shared, not to make things to like ultimately, make it convenient for people to watch while they're scrolling their phone after they just woke up, or they're sitting on the toilet scrolling their phone and they're like, oh, this is cool. I'll watch this for 5 minutes. No, I want when you see these projects for you to recognize this is meant to watch on your television or in a theater or something like that. And that's the dedication, basically.
When I heard you say, oh, he's got 30 minutes, buffer before he hits that cutoff between here and the next aid station, I thought, well, that's a lot of time, 30 minutes. But then we forget it's 30 miles to the next aid station. And that means I can only lose a minute a mile, which is easy to do if you're nursing a problem, you're working through something. Your buffer can disappear in between aid stations, and then you're up against it.
Yeah, so what was really fun is in this film, we actually ended up doing a director's VO. It's called a director's voiceover, which I haven't really done in the past before. But it felt like this film needed a voice to establish the rules. Like, what are the rules that we're playing in? What is this game we're playing? And ultimately, there's 22 aid stations across the 250, or 22 cutoffs. Sorry, there's 28 aid stations throughout Cocodona, 22 cutoffs. So some of those ones that don't have cutoffs, they're like water stations or smaller aid stations that might have like a little bit of nutrition, but it's understanding the game that they're playing. So the cutoff at one aid station might be 11:50 a.m. So if you come in at 11:40 a.m., that's fair game. But by the rule book, you need to leave that aid station before the clock strikes 11:50. So the challenge is, in a 250-mile race, you need sleep, you need to resupply, you need to gather yourself. And most runners who aren't limited to the cutoff range and by the cutoff, they have the ability to take a 2-hour nap in their sprinter van that their crew has. They have the ability to sit down and eat a real meal with their crew under a heat lamp in the middle of the night. People who are facing the cutoff, they don't have this reality because they're slowed down to the point where in order for them to reach the next cutoff, they're going to have to keep moving. And so oftentimes what you would see is you see people come in, their crew would get all their stuff, they'd get food, they'd pack like pizza and all kinds of real food, and they would have to leave so they could leave before that cutoff time would strike. And what they would do is a lot of runners would go like a 1/4 mile up trail, and they would just fall asleep on trail. So the experience itself is different in that way. Yeah.
You did 2 movies. You did The Chase, where you followed the top 5 runners. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you did The Chase, which is one side of the bookshelf. You've got that one. And now The Chase making up the other side of the bookshelf, following the 5 cutoff people. You've got both extremes on both sides. Can you draw any parallels between those 2 sets of athletes where you saw consistency? Didn't matter which side you were looking at, you saw a common thread between the 2 groups?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. And ultimately, I think that question is something that I hope gets answered in the film. There was something that we sort of talked about with the editor. The editor on this film is a good friend of mine. His name's Brooks Upham. And Brooks and I talked a lot about because this film is a unique experience in itself, what information do we want to force upon people, and what information do we want to hold back from people? At the end, what do we want people to be left with to consider for themselves versus what do we want to answer? And to me, this question that you just asked is sort of exactly that. I think it's okay that I say this. I wanted this film to feel like a story being told, so we split the film up into chapters. And the last chapter is called All Equal. That's the final chapter. And that's really the concept that we want people to be left with, is that it doesn't matter if you are the very first finisher or the very last finisher. Everybody's experience out there is valuable for themselves and is valuable for the community. And so there is no, and then we ultimately took it a little bit further, which I think is the bigger picture, is for the people that were unable to make it to the finish line. Are those experiences valuable? Are they just as valuable as the ones who crossed the finish line? And ultimately, the answer is yes, because what you're out there to do something that's extremely challenging, and you're out there to push yourself and possibly find your limitations, right? And to get cut off is the most raw version of that. To not make it is the biggest lesson you can possibly learn. I remember Jeff Browning said in The Chase, he said, you don't always, it's not what I wanted, but it's what I needed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately what we found is for these people who get cut off, they come back. Right. And that says everything.
So I'm going to ask this, just, round table discussion. Scott, you're into it too. To not make the cutoff and have to step away from the race, or to decide to take yourself out of the race, to cut your own band. Which do you think is tougher to live with? Is easier to accept? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was actually really interesting, because I haven't ever followed a race right at the cutoffs and been at the aid stations to see that moment where the cutoff happens. I didn't know what we were going to run into. I think the reality is that most people didn't experience what you would consider to be the sweeper or the cutoff. They didn't have that experience. Most people got to the point where they knew what time they needed to be at that next aid station, and they knew what pace that they were moving, and they knew they weren't going to be able to make it. And so it always became a personal decision, which I thought was movie magic personally. It was a decision to say, I've come this far, but it's okay. It's okay. And I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm going to make this decision. I'm not going to have somebody force me off this trail. I'm going to make this decision. I respect what I did. And that's kind of what we saw happen a lot of times. There was a few people who they would show up to an aid station, and they had an expectation that the cutoff was lenient, and that they would be 15 minutes late, and that they would have the option to keep going. And we saw that happen a few times. That wasn't portrayed in the film so much because it was often after the cutoff. And we didn't necessarily capture that, but we did experience that a few times where people are like, couldn't believe that they were unable to continue to keep going. But the race has to end at some point. So
yeah, we do these races to test our limits for some personal growth, no doubt. And maybe the biggest limit we can test or personal growth we can gather is not hitting that cutoff of being pulled from that race. It may not feel good at the moment, and it may be hard to live with for an extended period of time. I know, because I've been there. It's a moment where you do learn a life's lesson because of that experience. And if you made it every time, you would be shorted a bit on, did you push yourself hard enough? Did you push through the mental anguish to the point where you satisfied the requirement? And so as you look back, there may be a big lesson, life's lesson that you carry with you. And you may not appreciate it for 5 years. I don't know. But it is a moment of personal growth when it's handed to you without your choice.
Yeah, this reminds me of the concept I was really pitching when I was trying to sell this film. Is to me, I talked to you about the sitting on the couch, drinking a bottle of wine, watching a film. I think everybody who's in the ultra running community knows the person or knows the people who say, dude, 2029, man, 2029, I'm doing the race. I'm doing the thing. I'm going to start I can't do it this year, but 2029, that year, my kids will be this age and right? So there's nothing wrong with that, right? But ultimately, that was the concept that lived in my mind of, could we not show like those people, right, who are big fans of the sport and get so much from other people's experiences and are inspired to one day pursue that? Those people look exactly like the people who are existing in the back of the pack or near the cutoff of a race. They look exactly the same. And they're relatable. Oftentimes what we found as we told the story is that they have similar life circumstances, whether they have really demanding jobs or they have families that they're raising, or they have limitations like disabilities or something like that. Those two people look the same. And there's just something that occurred in the people who are in the race in their life that inspired them and gave them the confidence to sign up for that race. There's something that happened. And I think that there's so much power in that. And so my thought process was, what if we can create a film that can be, that jumping off point for these types of people who have always wanted to do this thing. And all it took was for them to see somebody that they can really connect to and relate to ultimately like pursue it,
I'll tell you that what you just said really hit home for me. It's almost like you're holding the mirror up in front of them, right? The moviegoer, and saying, hey, you know what? If you've thought about doing it, there's never a perfect time to do it. If you're waiting for your kids to be grown, your job to get easy, all the finances to line up, there's never going to be a good time to do it. And here's an example. Here's the mirror. You can do it if they can do it. I love that. The other thing that hit me a few comments back, Dylan, was the idea of stoicism here, where those back the packers or the ones who are chasing the cutoffs, they knew what they were up against, and they thought, I'm not going to be dictated. I'm not going to have this imposed on me. I'm going to take control and make the decision myself. How am I going to react to the situation I'm in, rather than have the situation react on me? And boy, what a great lesson. Boy, do I have to go to Arizona to see this movie? You said that there's 6 showings that you're going to be doing in theaters, where you're going to be there and hosting this. Where are they? When are they? How can someone go see this movie?
Yeah, I think the best way to go view this thing, I'll definitely encourage you coming to see a theater show. This is something that Jamil feels really excited about and wouldn't be able to happen without Jamil and his ability to bring the community together and get them excited. We see these events as no different than running a race, right? It's like we're coming together for a common passion, and just building our community and our connections and whatever. So following Air Viper Running has so much going on, but if you are following Air Viper Running and you go check out their website, you will see the Cutoff, the Cutoff webpage there, and that will show you where the events are happening. I know I'm going to miss something, but we've got Flagstaff is the world premiere. Phoenix, Arizona is a big premiere there. Denver, Colorado, Salt Lake City, Utah, Seattle, Washington. And then we're actually doing our first show on native land in the Four Corners area, which we're really excited about. So.
And if there's some, go ahead, Don.
You also mentioned before we started recording that this could be possibly available to run groups or clubs in some fashion if you're not in one of those areas.
Yeah. This concept was really exciting when we did the chase and had much more success than we originally thought. Ultimately, we shared where the theaters were going to happen, and we had people messaging us from everywhere saying, like, what about here? What about here? What about here? So we decided to make it available for people who kind of had a little bit of experience hosting these events. And ultimately what it became was large group runs, places that have hosted films before. They could purchase the rights to show the film for not too much. I think don't quote me on this, but it's like under $500, somewhere in there. And you can put on your own event and show that in your own city. And it was the coolest thing ever. Jamil, I'm somebody, I can't lie. I'm somebody who I want to do less and go all in on less. That's kind of my, the way I like to do things. Jamil is one, he's all about what's the best thing for the ultra running community. And then he's also a more is more guy. And so his desire is to get this. It's not about the views on YouTube. It's not about that. What it's about is creating memorable experiences for people, right? And we learned that when these groups, they purchase the film, they go on like a 5-mile group run together, and they all come back and meet at their local brewery and watch this film on their own projector that they set up and have a beer. And it's the coolest thing ever. Like, we would see, Instagram posts from it, and it's like, we had no part in that. We made the film, of course, but it's like they did that all on their own. So yeah, it's really special to be able to offer it in that way.
So we'll link in the show notes the web page, but it starts, the first one is on February 20th in Flagstaff, and then goes around the Western United States. The last one's in Salt Lake on March 31st. And then there's a place where you can click to get tickets. And there's also a place where you can click to host the event. And so there's a lot of information there. There's also a trailer, which I did not know there was a trailer, Dylan, and I apologize. I'm going to watch it as soon as we get done with recording this. I'm going to watch that trailer. And the last thing I'm going to say, you mentioned it. This isn't a film that you probably want to watch on your phone, one night as you're sitting on the couch. This is one you want to watch on the big screen with a bunch of your friends.
Yeah, no, that's the intention. That's what I want people to experience the film however works for them, of course. And trust me, there's a lot of things I watch on my phone for way too long during the day, but no, the effort that went into this film, it is with the intention of getting people to watch it and really experience it. And so doing that on a bigger screen with better speakers, that's what it was made for. And so I think that's going to be the best experience for sure.
Can the back of the pack be just as exciting as the front of the pack? And absolutely it can. And I'm going to share a cutoff story that Scott doesn't know this story, so this will be first time for you to hear it. and I was pacing a runner trying to make it through cutoff, and we gathered together as a group. The 5 folks at the end all gathered with their pacers, and we're going to push through together to get this done. And that was our commitment. We're going to stay together as a team. And we're getting close. At that time, we had GPS watches, so we knew it was another, 1.75 miles to get to that aid station. We knew exactly what time it was, and it was going to be close. And so they sent me forward. Now, whether this is breaking the rules or not, we're not going to tell you which race. And so I went forward, and my role was, if the aid station is still open, whistle, because then we have hope. And if you whistle, we'll keep the hammer down and we'll get to that aid station. But if we don't hear a whistle, then we're just going to take it. We're going to take it easy here and just celebrate as a team coming in. And I whistled, and they came in, they stormed in. And I don't think there's anything more exciting than the cutoff. The back of the pack doesn't compare to the front of the pack. The back of the pack is where it's happening.
Yeah, you honestly just gave me goosebumps right there. Yeah, that you brought me back to those moments. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. In, there's exciting things when people are racing and they're up against each other and who's going to show up to the aid station first. But there's nothing like seeing that clock ticking down and standing and just looking down a dark trail and seeing a headlamp of somebody showing up. And it's like, I knew they were going to make it. I knew they were going to make it. They show up and they have 2 minutes to get out of there. It's inspiring right? How do we think of aid stations? We think of them as these like reprieves of like, gosh, I've got to get there. If I can just get there, maybe I can feel better, right? And to get into an aid station to be told, you got to go, like, get out of here. You only have 2 minutes till you've got to leave this aid station or else you're cut from the race. I mean, that's devastating. That is devastating, but it just shows the mental fortitude of these people to just keep going. It's crazy.
Dylan, you just gave me goosebumps, because that is what our sport is about. And if you've captured that in your movie, count me in. I want to be there. I want to watch it, and I want to experience that.
Yeah,
hey,
check out the trailer. Yeah.
We'll check out the trailer. And if you missed, like I did, the chase, is there a place we can see that? Is it available online somewhere?
Oh yeah, Scott, you got to check out the chase, man. You're gonna like it. It's
you just filled my afternoon. I'm clearing my calendar. I'm gonna watch the trailer for the cutoff, and then I'm gonna watch the chase. Where can I see it?
Yeah, so they're with Jamil Curry, obviously that's a collaboration on both of these projects, and the commitment is to share these films for free ultimately on YouTube, and to allow the community to watch them as much as possible. And so that's where you can find them both. You could just type in the chase or the cutoff on YouTube. The cutoff will be coming out prior to Cocodona. We don't have an exact date yet. But after following this short film tour, the cutoff will be published as well. And so you can also follow along with Aeroviper Running, and then SOMO Collective, SOMO Collective is my production company. And we're also sort of marketing and sharing the timeline of everything as well.
Dylan, you've done something very, very important for our community, and this kind of binds us together, the mortar between the bricks. And I think back to some of the influential movies, Race for the Soul, which is one of the movies that brought me into the sport, that made me want to participate and see if I had the mettle to do some of these hard things, and Unbreakable by J.B. Bennett, which was a fantastic story. These movies help bring us together and kind of benchmark, who we are and what we're about. And I think you have contributed to that list, and it will be remembered, and you'll bring many people into the sport. affect many people's lives in a positive way. And so congratulations on that contribution, and I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your interest in storytelling. I think that, I mean, this sounds a little bit like self-righteous, but I really do think that it's important to promote and to create the stories that really hit home for this community and that the community was built on. And as the sport grows, you can see the way that those stories are starting to transition. I've said this before, but a lot of the best creatives in the sport now are getting pulled towards working with these major brands and making films that support that, which is great. And I'm happy that creatives can make a career and stuff. But I also think when there are films that come out that feel like they're really for the community, I think that should be celebrated and recognized as something that needs to continue to happen. And so I'm just grateful to have found somebody like Jamil Curry, who that is his only intention, and he supports me in that pursuit as well. And I appreciate you guys thinking that this type of story and concept is cool and being willing to talk about it and have me share it a little. So
good deal. Well, whether you're watching a movie before or after your run, it's important to lace them up and go out and run
Mas.